The alert came at 3 in the morning, Earth Standard Time. Dae-hyun was already awake, staring at the ceiling of his apartment in Seoul, when his communication device buzzed. The message was brief. "They're here. Report to command immediately." He dressed quickly, his mind racing. For 6 months, Earth scientists had been tracking unusual energy signatures at the edge of the solar system. Now, it seemed, whoever was out there had decided to make themselves known. By the time Dae-hyun arrived at the United Earth Command Center, the Situation Room was packed. Screens covered every wall showing images of ships. Not human ships. These were massive, elegant structures that seemed to grow rather than be built. They hung in space like crystalline flowers, each one larger than Earth's biggest space station. "How many?" Dae-hyun asked the duty officer. 12 that we can see. Could be more. They appeared 4 hours ago and have been sitting at the outer marker ever since. No hostile moves. No communication. Just waiting. Ji-woo entered the room behind him, carrying a tablet filled with preliminary analysis. She was the best xenobiologist Earth had, though until today her job had been purely theoretical. Now her theories were about to be tested. "They're scanning us," she said without greeting. "Every satellite, every space station, every piece of technology we have in orbit. They're cataloging everything." Dae-hyun nodded. "What do? We wait. If they wanted to destroy us, we'd already be gone. They're here for a reason." The reason became clear 6 hours later when a message arrived. It wasn't in any Earth language, but the ship's computer translated it automatically. The technology behind that simple act made several scientists in the room pale with shock. "Greetings, people of Earth. We are representatives of the Galactic Coalition. We have detected your recent experiments with faster-than-light travel. We welcome you to the greater community of intelligent species. A diplomatic vessel will arrive at your planet in 24 hours. Please prepare a delegation." The room erupted in noise. Questions, arguments, excited chatter. Dae-hyun let them talk for a moment before calling for silence. "Ji-woo and I will represent Earth," he said. "We need linguists, scientists, and military observers. I want a full briefing on everything we know about these coalition people in 12 hours. The briefing, when it came, was thin. The coalition had sent basic information about themselves, but it was clearly designed to overwhelm rather than inform. 73 different species, 14 sectors of controlled space, thousands of years of history, technologies that made Earth's best efforts look like stone tools. When the diplomatic vessel landed outside Seoul, half the world watched on their screens. The ship was smaller than the ones at the edge of the system, but still impressive. It touched down with barely a whisper of sound. The door opened and 3 beings emerged. The first was tall and thin, covered in what looked like transparent crystal. Light refracted through its body in rainbow patterns. This was Thalreen, the Coalition ambassador. The second was massive and armored, with 4 arms and skin like rough stone. Wartak, the military overseer, moved with the confidence of someone who had never lost a fight. The third was smaller, covered in soft fur, with large eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. The translator identified it as a science officer, but no name was given. Dae-hyun and Ji-woo met them at the landing site, flanked by Earth security but trying to appear welcoming. "Welcome to Earth," Dae-hyun said. "We're honored by your visit." Thalreen's crystalline body chimed softly, and the translator converted it to speech. "The honor is ours. It is always pleasing to discover new species. Your recent achievement in faster-than-light travel has brought you to our attention. We have much to discuss," Ji-woo added. "Please come inside." The negotiations took 3 days. Dae-hyun quickly realized that this wasn't a discussion between equals. The coalition was offering Earth a place in their structure, but it came with conditions. On the 3rd day, Wartak laid it out clearly. "We have reviewed your military capabilities. Your weapons, your ships, your defensive systems. You rated 2.3 on our threat assessment scale. Is that good?" Dae-hyun asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. "The minimum requirement for full coalition membership is 4.7. You are, by our standards, unable to defend yourselves against serious threats." Ji-woo bristled. "We've survived wars, conflicts, disasters. We're still here." Thalreen made a sound like wind chimes. "Against other humans, certainly. But the galaxy contains threats you cannot imagine. The coalition offers protection. In exchange, you accept our guidance." "You mean our surrender," Dae-hyun said quietly. "We mean your survival," Wartak rumbled. "You will be a protected species. You cannot vote on coalition matters. You cannot deploy military forces without permission. But you will be safe. Daehyun looked at Jiwoo. She was studying the aliens carefully, her scientific mind working behind her eyes. Finally, she spoke. You've done this before. How many species are protected like you're suggesting? 47, Dalreen answered, all flourishing under coalition oversight. And how many have ever been promoted to full membership? There was a pause. 6 over the past 3,000 years. The message was clear. Once you accepted protected status, you stayed there. Earth would become a backwater, watched over by more powerful species, never quite trusted to handle its own affairs. But Daehyun also knew Earth didn't have much choice. If the coalition wanted to, they could destroy every human ship and weapon in minutes. Refusing their offer might mean isolation at best, conquest at worst. We need time to discuss this with our governments, he said. Of course, Dalreen agreed, but do not take too long. The galaxy is not a safe place, especially for the unprepared. That night, Daehyun and Jiwoo sat in the command center, watching the alien ships on the screens. They're not lying about the danger, Jiwoo said. I've been reading the data they provided. There are things out there that make our worst nightmares look friendly. But they're also not telling us everything, Daehyun replied. Did you notice how they fight? What do you mean? Every battle record they showed us. Every conflict. They all fight the same way. Big ships. Powerful weapons. Straight-on confrontations. It's like they've never heard of guerrilla tactics, asymmetric warfare, or strategic deception. Jiwoo frowned. Maybe those tactics don't work in space. Or maybe, Daehyun said slowly, they've never needed them. They've been the strongest species for so long that they've forgotten how to fight any other way. Before Jiwoo could respond, alarms blared. Red lights flashed across every screen. A new message was coming through from Coalition Command, not the diplomatic channel. This was a military emergency broadcast. Daehyun pulled it up on the main screen. The message was simple, but it changed everything. Alert to all Coalition forces and member species. The Devourers have breached the Outer Rim defensive line. Multiple sectors under attack. This is not a drill. All military assets report to designated rally points immediately. The transmission included footage. Daehyun watched as coalition ships, massive and powerful, opened fire on something that looked like it was made of nightmares. Dark shapes that shifted and changed, absorbing weapons fire and growing larger. The coalition ships fought bravely, using all their advanced technology. They lost badly. Jiwoo gripped his arm. What was that? That, Daehyun said, his military mind already analyzing what he'd seen, is why they're really here. They don't want to protect us. They want every species they can get, even weak ones like us. Because they're losing, Jiwoo whispered. Daehyun nodded, and they don't even know it yet. The next morning, Earth's answer was delivered to the coalition. Humanity would accept protected status, but only if they were allowed to observe coalition military operations and contribute where possible. Dalreen seemed pleased. Wartok seemed amused by the notion that humans could contribute anything useful. Neither of them realized that Daehyun had just won the only victory that mattered. He'd gotten Earth a front-row seat to watch how the coalition fought, and more importantly, he'd gotten them a chance to show the galaxy that there was more than one way to win a war. The human observation post was located on a small station at the edge of coalition space. Daehyun had requested a position where they could watch military operations, and the coalition had obliged by putting them as far from anything important as possible. The station housed 50 human personnel. Most were scientists and analysts, but Daehyun had also brought military specialists, people who understood warfare in ways the coalition apparently didn't. Hyunji was one of them. She'd been a tactical officer in Earth's Navy, specializing in asymmetric combat scenarios. Now she sat in the observation room, watching coalition forces prepare for another engagement with the Devourers. They're doing it again, she said to Daehyun as he entered. Same formation as last time, identical. 3 defensive rings, heavy cruisers on the outside, support vessels in the middle, command ship at the center. It's like they only know one way to fight. Daehyun studied the display. The coalition fleet was impressive by any measure. Hundreds of ships, each one powerful enough to level a city. Their weapons could tear through metal and energy shields. Their defenses could withstand direct nuclear strikes. Against human forces, they would be unstoppable. Against the Devourers, they kept losing. "Where's Ji-woo?" Dae-hyun asked. "Lab. She's still analyzing the Devourer samples from the last battle site." Dae-hyun found Ji-woo hunched over a containment field, studying what looked like a piece of twisted metal and organic matter fused together. She didn't look up when he entered. "It's not a species," she said without greeting. "The Devourers aren't a single race or even an alliance. They're a collective intelligence made up of thousands of assimilated technologies and biological components. Like a hive mind? Worse, a hive mind that learns. Every ship they destroy, they absorb. Every weapon used against them, they study and adapt to. They're not just fighting the Coalition. They're becoming the Coalition piece by piece." Dae-hyun felt cold. Does Coalition Command know this? They know. They don't care. Their strategy is to hit harder, bring more firepower, overwhelm the enemy with superior technology. She finally looked up at him. But that's exactly what the Devourers want. Every weapon they face makes them stronger. Before Dae-hyun could respond, alarms sounded throughout the station. Another battle was beginning. They rushed back to the observation room where Hunji had multiple screens active, showing different angles of the engagement. Admiral Krelvoth was commanding the Coalition fleet. He was a veteran of 100 battles, respected across all Coalition species. His tactical display showed a textbook defensive formation. The Devourers arrived not in formation but in a swarm. Dark shapes that moved like oil through water, each one different from the last. Some were clearly built from destroyed Coalition ships. Others were organic nightmares. All of them were adapting in real time. "Fleet, hold formation," Krelvoth's voice came through the communication channel. "Fire on my mark, 3 or 2 Kawan mark." Light filled space as hundreds of weapons fired simultaneously. Energy beams, kinetic rounds, plasma torpedoes. It was a devastating display of coordinated firepower. The Devourers absorbed it all. Hyunji leaned forward. "Watch, they're changing," she was right. Where the energy beams hit, the Devourers' surfaces shifted, becoming reflective. Where kinetic rounds struck, they grew armor. Where plasma burned, they developed heat dispersion systems. All in real time, all in seconds. "Impossible," one of the human analysts whispered. "Not impossible," Ji-woo said from the doorway. "Inevitable. They've fought the Coalition before. They know every weapon, every tactic. There are no surprises left." The battle lasted 40 minutes. The Coalition fleet fought bravely, following established protocols and standard operating procedures. They rotated their formations properly. They covered their retreats. They followed every rule of engagement. They lost 30% of their ships. The Devourers lost nothing. What the Coalition managed to destroy simply broke apart and was absorbed by other Devourer units, making them stronger. When the retreat order finally came, Krelvoth's voice was heavy with exhaustion. "All ships fall back to Rally Point 7. Maintain defensive spacing. Do not break formation." Even in retreat, they followed the rules. That night, Dae-hyun called a meeting of all human personnel. He stood before them with a grim expression. "We've now watched 3 major engagements. The Coalition has lost all 3. They're not losing because they're weak or cowardly. They're losing because they're predictable." Tae-min, the chief engineer, spoke up. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we show them a different way to fight. The Coalition has been the dominant power for so long that they've forgotten what it's like to be the underdog. They fight with honor, with rules, with established doctrine." "And we don't?" asked one of the scientists. Dae-hyun smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Humanity has spent its entire history fighting wars we shouldn't have been able to win. We've perfected the art of fighting dirty." Hyunji understood immediately. "You want to teach them guerrilla warfare. I want to teach them how to survive. The Devourers adapt to patterns, so we show them how to fight without patterns, how to use chaos, deception, and acceptable losses to win." "The Coalition will never agree," Ji-woo said. "They have codes of honor, rules of engagement. What you're talking about violates everything they believe about civilized warfare." "Then they'll die civilized," Dae-hyun replied. "Or they'll learn that survival doesn't care about honor." The next morning, Dae-hyun requested a private channel with Admiral Krelvoth. It took hours to get approval, and when the Admiral finally appeared on the screen, he looked tired. "Representative Dae-hyun, I trust you are satisfied with your observations." "Admiral, I need to speak frankly. Your current tactics are not working. Krelvoth's alien features hardened. We have fought and won wars for millennia. Your species has barely left its home planet. What could you possibly teach us about warfare? How to lose? There was silence. Finally, Krelvoth said, "Explain. You fight to preserve every ship, every life, every piece of honor. The Devourers fight to consume everything. They don't care about losses because losses make them stronger. You're playing a game where the rules favor them. What would you suggest? That we abandon our principles? Fight like barbarians? I suggest you fight to win," Daehyun said. "Let me show you what that means. Give me a small force, human volunteers. Let us engage the Devourers our way. If we fail, you lose nothing but a few primitive humans. If we succeed, maybe you learn something." Krelvoth studied him for a long moment. "You understand that I expect you to fail. Humans rate 2.3 on our threat assessment scale. You are asking to face an enemy that has defeated fleets rated 8.0 and higher. I understand. Very well. You will have 6 of your vessels and authorization to engage Devourer forces in Sector 9. There is a mining colony under attack there. Save it if you can. When you fail, at least you will have died trying." The channel closed. Taemin appeared beside Daehyun. 6 ships against a Devourer force? That's suicide. Maybe, Daehyun agreed. Get the engineers together. We need to modify those ships, and modify them how? Strip off half the armor. Remove the heavy weapons. I want them fast and maneuverable, not strong and slow. Taemin stared at him. That's insane. You're making them weaker. I'm making them unpredictable. The Devourers expect coalition tactics. We're going to give them something they've never seen before. Over the next week, the human crew worked frantically. They stripped down 6 frigates, removing everything that wasn't essential. They installed quick-firing weapons instead of heavy cannons. They added extra engines and power systems designed for rapid acceleration. Hyunji trained the pilots on tactics that would have gotten them court-martialed in the coalition navy. Hit and run, false retreats, feigned weakness, sacrificial plays. Jiwoo studied the Devourer biology looking for weaknesses. She found something interesting. They adapt to energy signatures, she told Daehyun, but adaptation takes time. If you change weapons rapidly, keep them guessing, you might be able to hurt them before they adjust. How rapid? Seconds. Maybe less, Daehyun nodded. We'll make it work. When the day came to deploy, the entire human crew gathered in the hangar bay. Daehyun stood before them. We're about to show the coalition something they've never seen. We're going to fight a battle we're supposed to lose, and we're going to win it by being willing to lose everything. He looked at each face. Some of us might not come back. The coalition thinks we're expendable. Let's prove them right, and let's make it count. The 6 human ships launched toward Sector 9. Behind them, coalition observers watched with a mixture of pity and curiosity. They expected the humans to fail quickly. They expected another demonstration of why primitive species needed coalition protection. They had no idea what was about to happen. The mining colony in Sector 9 was dying. 18,000 workers lived there, mining rare minerals from the asteroid field. Now they huddled in shelters as Devourer ships tore apart their station piece by piece. Coalition reinforcements were 3 days away. The colonists had hours at best. Bora sat in the pilot seat of her modified frigate, watching the tactical display. The Devourer force consisted of 7 large ships and dozens of smaller attack craft. Any one of those large ships could destroy her vessel with a single hit. All ships, this is Daehyun. Remember the plan. We don't try to win a straight fight, we make them chase us, make them adapt to tactics we're about to abandon. Bora, you're up first. Bora grinned. Back on Earth, her instructors had called her reckless. Out here, reckless was the plan. She pushed her ship forward, accelerating toward the Devourer formation at a speed that made her instruments scream warnings. The other 5 human ships spread out, each taking a different vector. The coalition observer, Venthar, watched from a safe distance. He was supposed to document the human failure for the military records. He activated his recorder and began narrating. Human forces are approaching the Devourer position. 6 light frigates against a superior force. Initial approach is unusual. They are not maintaining formation. They appear to be acting independently. Bora reached weapons range and opened fire, then immediately banked hard left. Her shots hit one of the Devourer ships, causing minimal damage. But that wasn't the point. The Devourers responded, turning 3 of their vessels to pursue her. Their weapons fired, missing as Bo-Ra weaved through the asteroid field. She was using the rocks as cover, something Coalition ships never did because it risked damage to their vessels. "Contact!" another pilot called out. That was Sung-Ho, coming in from above the Devourer formation. He fired a spread of missiles, then dove below the field before return fire could touch him. The Devourers adapted quickly, their shields modified to better deflect the missile impacts. Their targeting systems began predicting human movement patterns, but by then the humans had changed tactics. Hyunji brought her ship in fast, launched every weapon she had in a wild spray, then retreated at full speed. It looked desperate, uncoordinated. The Devourers barely considered her a threat. They didn't notice the 3 automated drones she'd released, each one painted to look like debris. The drones drifted into the Devourer formation, ignored by their sensors. Then they exploded, not large explosions. Not enough to destroy Devourer ships, but enough to create chaos, to force them to reposition, to make them uncertain. Venthar watched in confusion. Human tactics appear to be random. No formation discipline, no coordinated fire, multiple weapon types used without strategic pattern. This is not warfare, this is chaos. He was right. It was chaos, and it was working. The Devourers were built to adapt to patterns. They consumed Coalition tactics and learned from them. But the humans had no pattern to learn. Every attack was different. Every retreat went a different direction. Every weapon changed before the Devourers could fully adapt. Bo-Ra came back around, this time targeting a different ship with different weapons. The Devourers started to adjust their shields, but she was already gone, and another human ship was attacking from a new angle with new tactics. "All ships, execute scatter protocol," Daehyun ordered. The human vessels spread out even more, each one operating independently. Coalition doctrine would call this a disaster, a complete breakdown of command structure. For the humans, it was the plan. One of the Devourer ships locked onto Sung-Ho's frigate, weapons charged. It was a killing shot. Sung-Ho didn't try to dodge. Instead, he accelerated directly at the Devourer vessel. "Sung-Ho, what are you doing?" Bo-Ra shouted. "What we talked about," he replied calmly. "Acceptable losses." His ship hit the Devourer vessel at full speed. Both ships exploded in a fireball that lit up the asteroid field. Venthar's voice was shocked. "One of the human ships just committed suicide, deliberately. This is madness." But Daehyun knew something Venthar didn't. Sung-Ho's crew had evacuated 30 seconds before impact, using emergency pods hidden in the asteroid field. They'd lose the ship, but the crew would survive. And more importantly, they'd just destroyed a Devourer vessel using a tactic the enemy couldn't adapt to. You can't adapt to someone willing to die to kill you. The remaining 4 human ships pressed their advantage. They attacked from impossible angles, used weapons in ways they weren't designed for, and broke every rule of engagement the Coalition had ever written. Taemin, commanding the engineering ship, did something particularly creative. He launched a series of containers toward the Devourer formation. The containers appeared to be filled with fuel cells, and the Devourers ignored them as debris, until they got close. Then the containers opened, releasing thousands of small mining charges, the kind used to break apart asteroids. The charges weren't powerful enough to hurt Devourer ships, but they created a massive debris field that scattered their sensors and broke up their formation. While the Devourers were blind and disorganized, the human ships struck from 3 directions at once, each using different weapon frequencies. 2 more Devourer vessels took critical damage. "This is impossible," Venthar muttered into his recorder. "Human technology is inferior. Their tactics violate all principles of coordinated warfare. By every measure, they should be destroyed by now. Yet they're winning." The battle lasted 2 more hours. It was messy, chaotic, and by Coalition standards, completely wrong. But when it ended, the Devourer force was destroyed or scattered, and the mining colony was saved. 3 human ships remained operational. Sung-Ho's crew was recovered from their emergency pods. Total human casualties: 12 dead, 47 wounded. By coalition standards, those were catastrophic losses for a minor engagement. By human standards, it was a victory. Dae-Hyun's ship approached the mining colony, where the colonists were emerging from their shelters. Their species was one he didn't recognize, covered in soft scales and multiple eyes. Through the translator, their message was clear. "Thank you. The coalition fleet said they couldn't reach us in time. We had accepted death. How did you do this?" "We fought differently," Dae-Hyun replied simply. Back at the human observation post, Ji-woo was analyzing the battle data. What she found made her call Dae-Hyun immediately. "The Devourers tried to adapt to your tactics at least 40 times during that engagement," she said. "Each time you'd changed to something new before they could complete the adaptation. You essentially overloaded their learning process. Can they recover from that? Probably, but not instantly. You've proven that rapid tactical changes work against them. The question is, will the Coalition learn from this?" They got their answer the next day when Admiral Krelvoth requested a conference with Dae-Hyun. This time, the Admiral's expression was different, not dismissive, curious. "I reviewed the battle footage," Krelvoth said. "Your tactics were unorthodox. They worked. At terrible cost. You lost a ship and crew. We saved 18,000 lives. The mathematics seem clear to me." Krelvoth was silent for a moment. "In coalition doctrine, we aim to preserve every vessel, every warrior. The idea of acceptable losses is difficult for us." "The Devourers don't care about your difficulty," Dae-Hyun said. "They care about consuming everything in their path. You can fight them honorably and lose, or fight them effectively and survive. You speak as if honor and survival cannot coexist. In this war, they can't. Not against an enemy that adapts to everything you do. You need to be willing to be unpredictable, even if that means being uncivilized." Krelvoth studied the human for a long moment. "The Council has taken note of your victory. They are divided. Some wish to learn from your methods. Others find them barbaric and dangerous. And you, Admiral? What do you think?" "I think," Krelvoth said slowly, "that we are losing this war. I think that pride and honor mean nothing if your species is extinct. And I think that perhaps we have been fighting the wrong way for too long." He paused, then continued. "I am authorizing you to train a mixed force of coalition and human vessels. Teach them your tactics. Show us how you fight." Dae-Hyun felt a surge of hope. "We'll need freedom to operate outside normal doctrine. You'll have it. But understand this, Dae-Hyun. If your methods fail, if they cause unnecessary deaths, the Council will shut this down immediately. You are not just representing humanity anymore. You are betting the lives of many species on your way of war." "I understand." After the call ended, Hyun-ji approached Dae-Hyun. "You know what you've just done? You've committed us to teaching the galaxy how to fight dirty. Some of these species have been civilized for thousands of years. They're going to hate what we show them." "I know," Dae-Hyun said, "but the Devourers don't care about civilization. They only understand consumption. If we want to survive, we have to speak their language." "And what language is that?" Dae-Hyun looked out at the stars, where Devourer forces continued their advance into coalition space. Violence without rules, war without mercy, victory at any cost. He turned back to Hyun-ji. "Get the team together. We have an entire military to retrain, and we don't have much time. The Devourers are coming, and when they arrive in force, the coalition needs to be ready to fight the way we do. Ugly, mean, and willing to do whatever it takes?" The training facility was a massive station orbiting a dead star. 200 ships from 12 different coalition species had gathered there, their commanders ready to learn from the humans. Most came reluctantly. Some came with open hostility. Insu stood before the assembled commanders in the main briefing hall. He was a specialist in psychological warfare, something the coalition didn't even have a word for in their military vocabulary. "War is not just about destroying ships," he began. "It's about destroying the enemy's will to fight, their ability to think clearly, their confidence in their own decisions." A Kralix commander, reptilian and proud, interrupted. "We destroy enemy vessels. That is war. Everything else is deception unworthy of warriors. And how many battles have you won against the Devourers using that philosophy? Insu asked quietly. The Kralix had no answer. Insu continued. The Devourers are a collective intelligence. They learn, adapt, and improve with every engagement. But they have a weakness. They process information logically, predictably, feed them contradictory data, and you can overload their adaptation systems. He brought up a display showing a series of false signals, fake distress calls, misleading energy signatures, ships broadcasting multiple identification codes. The Devourers will try to catalog and respond to all of it. While they're processing, you attack. That is trickery, another commander protested. It violates the codes of war. Daehyun stepped forward. Your codes were written for wars against species like yourselves. The Devourers have no codes. They don't take prisoners. They don't honor truces. They consume everything and learn from every engagement. You're fighting an enemy that doesn't play by your rules, and you're losing because you refuse to adapt. The room fell silent. Over the next weeks, the training intensified. Human instructors taught coalition forces tactics that horrified them. False retreats, sacrificial maneuvers, weapons used in ways that violated their operational manuals. Yuna, the communications specialist, ran a particularly controversial session. She taught coalition crews how to broadcast false fleet movements, create phantom ships on enemy sensors, and use their own destroyed vessels as decoys. You want us to desecrate our fallen? A Telnari officer demanded. Use their ships as bait? I want you to use every advantage, Yuna replied. The Devourers will consume those ships anyway. Better to make them count for something. The resistance was fierce, but slowly it began to crack. The coalition commanders had seen too many defeats. They'd lost too many ships using traditional tactics. Some were willing to try anything. Hyunji trained them in what she called the chaos doctrine, every ship acting independently. No predictable formations. Constant tactical changes. Your strength is coordination, she explained. But against the Devourers, coordination becomes predictable. Learn to fight as individuals who happen to share a goal, not as units following a plan. Taiman worked with coalition engineers, teaching them to modify their ships, strip away armor for speed, replace heavy weapons with multiple lighter ones, sacrifice protection for maneuverability. Our ships are designed to withstand damage, an engineer complained. You're making them weaker. I'm making them harder to hit, Taiman corrected. And harder to predict. A ship the Devourers can't catch is better than a ship they can destroy. But it was Jiwoo's contribution that proved most controversial. She proposed what she called the Scorched Protocol. Every station, every colony, every ship should be rigged to self-destruct if Devourer assimilation becomes inevitable, she explained to a horrified council session. The Devourers grow stronger by consuming your technology. Deny them that resource. You're suggesting we destroy our own infrastructure? The council sovereign asked. Our own people? I'm suggesting you give your people a choice, Jiwoo replied. Let them trigger the destruction themselves rather than becoming part of the Devourer collective. Some might choose that option, others might not. But right now you're giving them no choice at all. The debate raged for days. In the end, the council approved the Scorched Protocol but made it voluntary. Stations could implement it if their populations agreed. 17 colonies and 43 stations immediately voted yes. They would rather die as themselves than live as part of the Devourers. Meanwhile, the Devourers continued their advance. Intelligence reports showed they were gathering their forces for a massive push into coalition core territories. The main fleet was 3 times larger than anything ever assembled. In a War Council meeting, Admiral Krelvoth laid out the situation. They will reach the Helix sector within 30 days. If they break through there, 7 core worlds will be exposed. We are evacuating non-essential personnel, but we cannot abandon those worlds entirely. How many ships can you field? Daehyun asked. 3,000 of our best vessels. It's the largest fleet we've ever assembled. Against how many Devourers? Estimates suggest 9,000 craft, possibly more. The room went quiet. Even with human tactics, those odds were grim. Bo-Ra, who had been invited to the council, spoke up. Then we don't fight them ship to ship. We fight them in ways they can't counter with numbers. Explain, Krelvoth said. Insu teaches them to doubt their own sensors. Yuna teaches them to distrust their communications. I teach them to fear empty space. We make the battlefield itself their enemy. Daehyun nodded, understanding. We turn the fight into something they can't adapt to because it's not really a fight. It's a nightmare made of uncertainty. Over the next 2 weeks, preparations intensified. Coalition forces, trained in human tactics, took positions throughout the Helix sector. But they didn't create traditional defensive lines. Instead, they scattered, hiding in asteroid fields, nebulae, and gravitational anomalies. Inesu's team seeded space with false signals. Thousands of them, each one mimicking a coalition ship or station. The Devourers would have to investigate each one, wasting time and resources. Yuna prepared a massive information attack. Mathematical paradoxes, recursive code loops, contradictory orders. All of it would be broadcast directly at Devourer forces, attempting to overload their collective processing. Taemin set up what he called Trojan stations, automated facilities that appeared to be abandoned but were actually massive bombs. When the Devourers came to assimilate them, they would detonate. Jiwoo's Scorch protocol was implemented on 70 stations now. Each one was ready to deny the Devourers any technology they might gain from conquest. But the most controversial preparation came from Daehyun himself. He proposed something that made even his own people uncomfortable. "We broadcast our weaknesses," he said in a planning session. "We make the Devourers think they've found our vulnerabilities. We let them think they're winning. And then," Krelvoth asked, "then we hit them with everything we've got. Not where they expect. Not when they expect. We make them afraid that every victory might be a trap." Hyunji shook her head. "You're talking about making the entire war a psychological operation. Using thousands of lives as bait." "I'm talking about survival," Daehyun replied. "The Devourers learn from every battle, so we teach them the wrong lessons. We make them paranoid, hesitant, uncertain. A learning intelligence that can't trust what it learns is just noise." The council debated for hours. Finally, the Sovereign spoke. "Your methods disturb us deeply. They violate principles we have held for millennia. But we are losing this war. We will try your plan, but know this, humans. If this fails, if we lose because we abandoned our principles for yours, history will remember you as the species that led us to destruction." "If we lose," Daehyun said quietly, "there won't be anyone left to remember anything." As the Devourer fleet approached, the coalition waited. Not in proud formations, but hidden in shadows. Not broadcasting strength, but projecting confusion. The night before the battle, Daehyun found Jiwoo in the observation deck, watching the stars. "Do you think we're doing the right thing?" she asked. "Teaching them to fight this way?" "I think we're doing the only thing," he replied. "The coalition is dying because they're too civilized to win. We're showing them how to be barbaric enough to survive. And after, if we win, what kind of galaxy will we have created?" Daehyun had no answer for that. Maybe there would be no after. Maybe this was where humanity's story ended, taking the rest of the galaxy down with them into darkness. Or maybe, just maybe, they would teach the coalition that civilization wasn't about how you fought. It was about what you fought for. The Devourer fleet arrived the next morning, 9,000 strong, ready to consume the heart of coalition space. They had no idea they were flying into a war zone where the rules had changed, where every shadow might hide a threat, where every victory might be a trap, where the enemy had learned to fight not with honor but with desperation. The coalition had become something new, something that combined technological superiority with human ruthlessness. The Devourers were about to discover what that combination could do. The Devourer fleet entered the Helix sector expecting another easy victory. What they found instead was chaos. Sensors picked up thousands of coalition signatures scattered throughout the sector, ships everywhere, stations broadcasting on multiple frequencies, distress calls from dozens of locations simultaneously. It was overwhelming, confusing. Exactly as Daehyun had planned, the Devourers did what they always did. They began cataloging threats, prioritizing targets, adapting their approach. Their collective intelligence started processing the massive amount of data. That's when Yuna launched her attack. From hidden transmitters throughout the sector, a flood of information poured into Devourer communication networks. Mathematical equations that had no solution, logic puzzles that contradicted themselves, instructions that formed infinite loops, code that rewrote itself endlessly. The Devourers tried to process it all. Their learning intelligence, designed to absorb and understand everything, began choking on contradictory information. "It's working," Yuna reported from her station. "Their response time is slowing. They're trying to make sense of the data. Phase 2, Daehyun ordered. Hidden coalition ships powered up their weapons, but they didn't fire at the main Devourer fleet. Instead, they targeted the false signals Insu's team had planted, destroying the phantom ships and stations. To the Devourers, it looked like their own weapons fire. Their sensors showed them destroying coalition targets, but their collective intelligence couldn't confirm the kills. The data didn't match. Nothing made sense. Fear wasn't an emotion the Devourers understood, but uncertainty was, and for the first time in their existence they were uncertain. Bora led the first actual strike. Her squadron appeared from inside a nebula, moving at speeds coalition ships weren't supposed to achieve. They fired on a Devourer formation, then vanished back into the cloud before return fire could touch them. The Devourers adapted their sensors to track ships in the nebula. But by then, Bora was attacking from a different direction with different weapons. She'd changed tactics in the time it took them to adjust. Across the sector, similar attacks were happening. Coalition forces trained in human methods struck and vanished. They used terrain the Devourers couldn't easily follow. They changed tactics constantly. They made every engagement unpredictable. Admiral Krelvoth watched from his command ship, simultaneously awed and horrified. This is working. But at what cost? We've sacrificed our coordination, our discipline. You've sacrificed your predictability, Daehyun corrected. The coordination is still there. It's just hidden in the chaos. On the other side of the sector, Taemin's Trojan stations were doing their work. Devourer ships moved to assimilate what appeared to be abandoned coalition facilities. When they began the consumption process, the stations detonated. 7 Devourer capital ships were destroyed in the first hour. 12 more took critical damage, but the Devourers were learning. They began avoiding the stations, focusing on the actual coalition ships. Their fleet, though damaged, was still massive. Still deadly. They're adapting to the traps, Hyunji reported. We need to change approach again. Do it, Daehyun said. The coalition fleet stopped running. Instead, they formed up in traditional defensive formations, broadcasting clear tactical patterns. To the Devourers, it looked like the enemy had abandoned the chaotic tactics and returned to predictable behavior. The Devourers took the bait. They pressed their advantage, moving in with overwhelming force to crush the coalition fleet. That's when the Scorched Protocol activated. 17 stations, scattered throughout the sector, self-destructed simultaneously. The explosions weren't aimed at Devourer ships. They were aimed at creating debris fields, environmental hazards, gravitational distortions. The battlefield itself became a weapon. Devourer ships found themselves trapped in fields of spinning wreckage, their sensors overwhelmed by radiation and debris. Coalition forces, knowing the terrain because they'd created it, struck from unexpected angles. Bora led her squadron through a debris field that would have destroyed most pilots. She emerged directly behind 3 Devourer vessels and unloaded everything she had before they could react. This is insane, she shouted over the communication channel, laughing with adrenaline. This is beautiful. But the Devourers were still adapting. Their collective intelligence was vast, and even overloaded with bad data, it was learning. Slowly, they began to counter the coalition tactics. Jiwoo saw it first. They're filtering our attacks, building a pattern database from the chaos. In another hour, they'll have adapted enough to turn this around. Daehyun had expected this. All ships execute final protocol. Across the sector, coalition commanders received the order they'd hoped would never come. The order they'd trained for but prayed they'd never use. 12 coalition capital ships, each one heavily damaged but still functional, turned toward the Devourer main fleet. Their crews evacuated to smaller vessels, leaving skeleton teams to pilot the ships. Among those skeleton teams was Daehyun himself. You don't have to do this, Jiwoo said over the communication channel. We can find another way. There is no other way, Daehyun replied. The Devourers have adapted to everything else. This is the one tactic they can't counter, someone willing to die to kill them. He wasn't alone. 11 other ships had volunteer crews. Human, Kralix, Talnari, and others, warriors from species that had never fought together before, united now in a final desperate gambit. The 12 ships accelerated toward the Devourer core fleet. Point defense systems fired at them. Energy weapons carved through their armor. But they kept coming. Engines pushed beyond safety limits, hulls breaking apart from the stress. The Devourers tried to stop them. They diverted dozens of ships to intercept. But the coalition suicide vessels were already too close, moving too fast. Sung-ho, commanding one of the ships, spoke calmly into the communication channel. "Remember us as the ones who were willing to do what needed to be done." The ships hit the Devourer formation like hammers. Each one was loaded with every explosive device Taemin could fit into their holds. The detonations created a chain reaction that tore through the Devourer core fleet. From her distant position, Bo-Ra watched the explosions light up space. Tears streamed down her face. They did it. They actually did it. But Ji-Woo's voice cut through the moment. The core intelligence is still intact. The main Devourer processor, it survived. She was right. At the center of the devastation, a massive biomechanical structure remained. It was the heart of the Devourer collective, the central intelligence that coordinated all their forces. And it was adapting, learning from the suicide attacks, preparing countermeasures. "All forces converge on the core," Admiral Krelvoth ordered. "Hit it with everything we have left." The remaining coalition ships moved in, firing every weapon they possessed. Energy beams, kinetic rounds, plasma torpedoes. Everything. The core absorbed it all, its adaptive shields flickering but holding. It was learning, adjusting, surviving. Yuna tried her information attacks again, broadcasting the logic bombs and recursive code. But the core was filtering it now, ignoring the contradictions, focusing only on survival. "It's not working," Insu reported. "It's learned to ignore our psychological warfare." The battle hung in balance. The coalition had thrown everything at the Devourers, used every tactic, paid every price. But the core intelligence remained, and as long as it survived, the Devourers could rebuild. Then Ji-Woo saw something in her analysis data. The core is processing purely on logic now. It's filtered out everything irrational, everything emotional. It's become completely mechanical in its thinking. "So what?" Hyunji asked. "We can't hurt it, but we can confuse it," Ji-Woo said. "Yuna, can you broadcast pure human emotion? No logic, no structure, just raw feeling?" Yuna understood immediately. She opened all channels and began transmitting. Not code, not information, but recordings of human voices. Laughter, crying, anger, joy, fear, hope. The complete chaos of human emotion, unfiltered and illogical. The Devourer core tried to process it, tried to catalog and understand it. But emotion had no pattern, no logic, no structure that could be learned. The collective intelligence, designed to absorb and understand everything, encountered something it fundamentally could not process. Human irrationality. Its processing systems began to lag, trying to make sense of the impossible. The collective consciousness that held the Devourer fleet together started to fragment. "It's working," Ji-Woo shouted. "The core is destabilizing." Admiral Krelvoth saw the opportunity. "All ships, focus fire on the core, now." The coalition fleet, what remained of it, concentrated every weapon on the Devourer intelligence. This time the adaptive shields flickered and failed, overwhelmed by the sustained assault while the core struggled to process the emotional data flood. The structure exploded. Not a quick destruction, but a slow collapse as the biomechanical systems fell apart. Across the sector, Devourer ships stopped moving. Without the collective intelligence to guide them, they were just machines drifting and dead. The battle was over. The cost was staggering. 40% of the coalition fleet was destroyed. 60% of human vessels were gone. Thousands of warriors dead, including Daehyun and the other volunteer crews who had piloted the suicide ships. But the Devourers were broken.